You have become the very thing you swore to destroy moment. When I was a kid, I swore I would never be like my father. My name's Ryan, and my dad was the kind of man who filled every room with his temper. Not always violent, but loud, sharp, the type who could cut you down with a single sentence. If a glass tipped over at dinner, it was a 5-minute lecture. If I brought home a B on a test, it was, "You're lazy, you'll never amount to anything." I told myself that when I grew up, I would never, ever talk to anyone, especially my kids, the way he talked to me. By my mid-20s, I thought I'd done a decent job. I moved out, worked construction, eventually started managing crews. I had a girlfriend, later a wife, named Laura. We had our first child when I was 28, a little boy named Ethan. Holding him in the hospital, I felt like everything I had hated about my childhood was behind me. But stress creeps in quiet. When Ethan was 3, I was working long hours, sometimes 6 days a week. Money was tight, rent always looming, and I carried it home with me. Laura stayed home with Ethan, and by the time I got in from work, she was exhausted, and I was already irritated. The house was loud, toys everywhere, and Ethan was in the stage where he asked why about everything. One night, I came home to find juice spilled all over the living room carpet. Laura was in the kitchen cooking, and Ethan was on the floor with his toy cars, right next to the stain. I dropped my tool bag and snapped, "For Christ's sake, Ethan, can you not sit still for 5 minutes without making a mess?" The look on his face stopped me cold. His mouth opened like he was going to say something, but he shut it, eyes wide. He looked exactly the way I must have looked as a kid, shrinking back under my dad's words. I heard my own voice, sharp and heavy, and it sounded like my father's. Laura came out from the kitchen and gave me a look I'll never forget. Disappointed, tired, but more than that, protective. She scooped Ethan up and carried him upstairs without saying a word. I stood in the living room, staring at the red stain on the carpet, heart pounding, realizing I had just become the very thing I promised myself I wouldn't be. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying it in my head. My dad standing over me when I was Ethan's age, angry about something small. The fear, the shame, and now I had passed it forward. The next morning, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Normally, he'd yell, "Daddy," and run over. I sat down across from him and said, "I'm sorry I yelled." He just kept spooning cereal into his mouth. Finally, he whispered, "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. I could feel it. That was the moment I knew I was in trouble. Not with Laura, not even with Ethan, but with myself. I had always thought the line between me and my dad was thick, unbreakable. But under stress, tired, and angry, it blurred in an instant. It didn't happen just once either. Over the next few months, I caught myself snapping more often. "Stop crying, it's not a big deal." You never listen. The same cutting tone, the same impatience. Every time I saw Ethan flinch, and every time I hated myself for it. One evening, when Ethan was 4, Laura pulled me aside after he'd gone to bed. "You sound like your father," she said. She didn't say it cruelly, just matter of fact. That hit harder than anything. She'd seen it too. I don't know if there's a single fix for something like that. I just know I never wanted my son to grow up with memories of me the way I had of my dad. So I started trying to stop myself, biting back the words before they came out, walking outside for a breath when I felt the anger boiling, apologizing when I messed up, even if it felt awkward. The hardest part was admitting that I wasn't immune. I had thought hating my father's behavior would be enough to protect me from repeating it, but it wasn't. It lived in me, waiting for the right mix of stress and exhaustion to come out. Years later, Ethan doesn't remember that specific night, but I do. I always will. It was the moment I saw clearly that I had become the very thing I swore to destroy, and it's been the thing pushing me to fight against it ever since.